I want to welcome you all. We're very happy to see you all here at the second event of the Poetry Place International Festival. My name is Noga Komai, and I'm the producer of the festival, along with Noah Shakarji and Gilad Meiri, who are the co-manager of Poetry Place. I'm honored to introduce Michal Shalev, who will host this conversation with the poet Elisa Díaz Castelo. Michal Shalev is a translator from English, French, Spanish, and Portuguese. Her translations have been published by Zikit, Nine Lives, Babylon, Carmel, and others, as well as in various journals. Some of her work includes Die My Beloved by Ariana Horowitz, The Dance of Reality by Alejandro Khodorovsky, and Architecture for the Poor by Hassan Fathi. Before I pass the mic to Michal, some technical information. Your microphone will be muted during the event, but we will dedicate the last 10 minutes or so to your questions. You may write them in the chat box during the event. And that's it. Now I pass the mic to Michal and wish us all an inspiring evening.
Thank you very much. It's my honor. I will now introduce Elisa Díaz Castelo. She was born in Mexico City in 1996 to a family of doctors. She has an MFA in creative writing from New York University. She has been awarded the San Diego State University Poetry International Prize in 2016, and her first collection of poetry, Principia, won the Alonso Vidal National Poetry Prize. To this date, she published 2 additional books, El Reino del No Lineal, which won her the prestigious Aguas Caliente Poetry Prize, and Proyecto Manhattan, which is a hybrid text that is almost a play. She writes about subjects as diverse as science, mythology, and death, and she writes stunningly beautiful poetry. Hi, Elisa.
Hi, Michal. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Noga. Thank you for working on these translations. And well, it's lovely to be talking to you all. And I will love to talk with you, Michal, about my poems and about whatever you like.
First of all, I'm really happy that you're here and you caught your flight back to Tenerife.
Yeah, yes, me too, because I had a flight a few hours ago and I was kind of stressed, but I made it perfectly. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Wonderful. So I will just start talking. Well, your first book, Principia, was published in 2017, right? And its title alludes to Isaac Newton's Philosophiae Naturalis Principia Mathematica. I knew it would be useful to learn Latin. And as you'd say, but you also said that you meant it as a feminine form of Principia as opposed to Principio, which is the Spanish word for beginning, and it's masculine. So this is a feminine version of it. And the first poem in that book is called Scoliosis, in English scoliosis, which is a medical condition. In Hebrew, it's akemet, or scoliosis, the more medical term. I think maybe we can just read it first.
Oh, for sure. Yes. I'll read the whole thing in Spanish.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can we have the, one second?
Sure.
With the first one.
Perfect. Escoliosis. En la búsqueda de la forma se me distrajo el cuerpo. Es eso, nada más. Asimetría. La errata vertebral, el calibraje óseo, la rotación espinada. Es el hueso mal conjugado. Es una forma de decir que a los 12 años ya se ha cansado el cuerpo. Es la puntería errada de mis huesos, la desviada flecha. No es lo que debiera. Mi esqueleto quiso escapar un poco de sí mismo. Se le dice escoliosis a esa migración de vértebras, a estos goznes mal nacidos, hueso ambiguo, a esa espina dorsal bien enterrada. A los 12 años se me desdijo el cuerpo, porque árbol que crece torcido nunca, porque mis huesos desconocen el alivio de la línea, su perfección geométrica. Me creció adentro una curva, honda, giro, de retorcido nombre, escoliosis. como si a la mitad del crecimiento dijera de pronto el cuerpo, mejor no, olvídalo, quiero crecer para abajo, hacia la tierra, como si en mi esqueleto me dudara la vida asimétrica, desfasada de anclas o caderas, mascarón desviado, recalante. Mi columna esboza una pregunta blanca que no sé responder, y en esta parábola de hueso, de esta pendiente equivocada, de lo que creció, chueco, de lado, para adentro, se me desfasan el alma y los rincones, mi cuerpo, perfectamente alineado desde entonces, con el deseo de morir y de seguir viviendo. Si las vértebras, si la osamenta quiere, se desvive, rota por no dejar el suelo, si se quiere volver o se retorna, retoño dulce de la tierra rancia, deseo aberrante de dejar de nacer, pronto, de pronto, con la malnacida duda esbozada bajo la piel, reptante. Paralelamente, no es eso, no es eso, no, eso no, no es ahí, donde ahí acaba, donde empieza el dolor, empieza el cuerpo. Si se duele, si tiembla al acostarse, un dolor con sordina, un daltónico dolor vago, si el agua tibia y la natación, si la faja, como hueso externo, cuerpo volteado, si los factores de riesgo y el desuso, si el deslave de huesos. Es minúsculo el grado de equivocación cuyo ángulo. A los 12 años se me desdijo el cuerpo. Lo que era tronco quiso ser raíz. Es eso, el cuarto menguante, la palabra espina, la otra que se curva al fondo, escoliosis. Es el cuerpo que me ha dicho que no.
Thank you. And I will not read it in Hebrew, but I will need the start in the beginning. Thank you. Okay. בחיפוש אחר הצורה, גופי התבלבל, זהו זה. זה הכל, הסימטריה, טעות השדרה, קיול השלד, סיבוב העמוד. זו העצם המורכבת לא נכון. זו דרך לומר שבגיל 12 הגוף כבר התעייף. זו החטאת המטרה של עצמותיי. זה החץ שסטה. שלדי הפר את חובתו, רצה לברוח קצת מעצמו. סקוליוזיס קוראים לנדידה הזאת של החוליות. לצירים משובשים אלה, לעצם זו המטושטשת, לעמוד השדרה הזה הקבור היטב. בגיל 12 התכחש גופי לעצמו, כי עץ שצומח עקום לעולם לא, כי עצמותיי אינן מכירות את ההקלה שבקו הישר, את שלמותו הגיאומטרית. צמח בתוכי גבנון, גל, עיכול, בעל שם מפותל, סקוליוזיס, כאילו באמצע הצמיחה. אמר פתאום הגוף, בעצם לא. תשכחי מזה, אני רוצה לצמוח מטה, כלפי האדמה. כאילו בשלדי פקפקו החיים נעשו אסימטריים, עם מוגנים או ירחיים מבוטלים, חרטום ספינתם מעוקם ותקוע. עמוד שדרתי מתווה שאלה לבנה שאין לי עליה תשובה. ומשל העצמות הזה והתורן הזה הטועה של מה שצמח עקום הצידה כלפי פנים, בוטלו לי הנשמה והפינות, ומאז גופי מיישר קו עם התשוקה למות ולהוסיף לחיות. אם ירצו החוליות, אם ירצה השלד, יתרסקו ארצה. מרוב תשוקה להישאר, אם ירצו לחזור או אם ישובו, נבט מתוק מתוך האדמה המעופשת, משאלה משובשת לחדול להיוולד מהר. פתאום עם הפקפוק המנוול המקנן מתחת לאור המזדחל במקביל, זה לא זה, לא זה, לא, זה לא, זה לא שם, לא שם זה מסתיים. ואשר מתחיל הכאב, שם מתחיל הגוף. אם כואב, אם רועד, כששוכבים כאב מעומעם, כאב מעורפל, עיוור צבעים, עם המים הפושרים והשחייה, עם המכוך, כמוהו כעצם חיצונית, כגוף מעופח, עם גורמי הסיכון ואי השימוש, עם הפועלת העצמות, מזערית, דרגת הטעות, מזערית הזווית. בגיל 12 התכחש גופי לעצמו, מה שהיה גזע רצה להיות שורש. זה, הגב הדועך, המילה עמוד שדרה, המילה אחרת המתעכלת לאחור. סקוליוזיס, זה הגוף שאמר לי לא. It's a translation by Tal Nitzan. And first of all, how is it to hear it in Hebrew? It must sound...
Wow, it's amazing. It really moves me to hear it in Hebrew. I love the language and I would love to learn. And so it's beautiful to listen to it in that language. Yeah.
Wow. So and what do you do when you start? I mean, it's your first book of poems and it's called Principia. It's a beginning, and the beginning is pain, the beginning of everything.
Yeah, well, the title, as you said, was a little reference to the Principia Mathematica of Isaac Newton, no? Principia Mathematica, but I also thought it would be a nice gesture to title it like that, because it is in fact my first poetry book. So I thought it was like a little joke, like an inside joke.
Fun.
Yeah, and also because of what you said, because in Spanish, principio is the beginning, right? But then principia would be like a feminine beginning. So I'm playing there with the language to suggest that it's a book written from the perspective of a woman. Yeah.
And what made you choose this poem as the first poem?
Oh, well, I think as soon as I wrote it, I realized that I wanted the whole book to respond to its premise, I guess, because I like how the poem addresses a scientific topic, but it's not necessarily, the scientific topic is not so much the center of the poem, but rather it's like a metaphorical reality that's constantly being developed. Like I think I wanted to use science as a metaphor for intimacy and for like a personal experience. So with that poem, I thought like, yes, this is the tone I want my book to respond to. Yeah, and also because in the Principia Mathematica, Isaac Newton writes a lot of escolios, which are like, at least in Spanish, they are called escolios, which means like footnotes. And in those footnotes, he wrote many things, many very important things in today's like physics and science. And so I thought it was nice that the word for those footnotes in the Principia Mathematica is escolios, which is very similar.
It was like something that made it happen. Wow. And it's also interesting because, I don't know, the age of the poem, I mean, 12 in Judaism, it's like, no, it's bat mitzvah, it's like the quinceañera
the quinceañera in Mexico. Yeah.
It's the age when you cross from childhood to
adulthood or mature.
Okay. And maybe we, surprisingly, after this song, the next, sorry, I say song because in Hebrew it's the same word and I keep confusing.
That's beautiful.
So the second poem in this book is a surprise. It's in a very different tone. And it's a poem about knowledge and faith. And maybe you should read that.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Well, maybe I should say before that I was raised as a Catholic, and in Catholicism we have this creed, the credo, which is like a prayer we say, where we say what is believed in the religion, right? So this is kind of a rewriting of that prayer. So, credo. Oh, there it is. Creo en los aviones, en las hormigas rojas, en la azotea de los vecinos y en su ropa interior que los domingos se mece empapada de un hilo. Creo en los tinacos, corpulentos, negros, en el sol que los cala y en el agua que no veo, pero imagino, quieta, oscura, calentándose. Creo en lo que miro en la ventana, en el vidrio, aunque sea transparente. Creo que respiro porque en él pulsa un puño de vapor. Creo en la termodinámica, en los hombres que se quedan a dormir y amanecen tibios como piedras que han tomado el sol toda la noche. Creo en los condones. Creo en la geografía móvil de las sábanas y en la piel que ocultan. Creo en los huesos solo porque a Santi se le rompió el húmero y lo miré en su arrebato blanco, astillado por el aire y la vista como un pez fuera del agua. Creo en el dolor ajeno. Creo en lo que no puedo compartir. Creo en lo que no puedo imaginar ni entiendo. En la distancia entre la tierra y el sol o la edad del universo. Creo en lo que no puedo ver. Creo en los exnovios, en los microbios y en las microondas. Creo firmemente en los elementos de la tabla periódica, con sus nombres de santos, cadmio, estroncio, galio, en su peso y en el número exacto de sus electrones. Creo en las estrellas porque insisten en constelarse, aunque quizá estén muertas. Creo en el azar todopoderoso, en las cosas que pasan por ninguna razón, a santo y seña. Creo en la aspiradora descompuesta, en las grietas de la pared, en la entropía que lenta nos acaba. Creo en la vida aprisionada de la célula, en sus membranas, núcleos y organelos. Creo porque la he visto en diagramas, planeta deforme partido en dos, con sus pequeñas vísceras expuestas. Creo en las arrugas y en los antioxidantes. Creo en la muerte a regañadientes, solo porque no vuelven los perdidos, solo porque se me han adelantado. Creo en lo invisible, en lo diminuto, en lo lejano. Creo en lo que me han dicho, aunque no sepa conocerlo. Creo en las 4 dimensiones, ahora en 5. Creí fervientemente en el átomo indivisible. Ahora creo que puede romperse. Y creo en electrones y protones, en neutrones imparciales y hasta en quarks. Creo, porque hay pruebas que nunca llegaré a entender, en cosas tan improbables e ilógicas como la existencia de Dios.
אני מאמינה במטוסים, בנמלים אדומות, במרפסת הגג של השכנים ובבגדיהם התחתונים, שבימי ראשון מתנפנפים מלכים על חוט כביסה. אני מאמינה במכלי מים גדולי גוף שחורים, בשמש שמחלחלת אליהם ובמים, שאני לא רואה, אבל מדמיינת, שקטים אפלים מתחממים. אני מאמינה במה שאני רואה בחלון, בזגוגית, אף על פי שהיא שקופה. אני מאמינה שאני נושמת, בגלל חופן העדים שפועם בה. אני מאמינה בתרמודינמיקה, בגברים שנשארים לישון ומתעוררים, חמימים כאבנים שספגו את השמש, לילה שלם. אני מאמינה בקונדום. אני מאמינה בגיאוגרפיה הנאה של הסדינים ובאור שהם מסתירים. אני מאמינה בעצמות רק כי לסנטי נשברה עצם הזרוע וראיתי את ההתפרצות הלבנה המבוקעת, חשופה, נראית כמו דג מחוץ למים. אני מאמינה בכאב של הזולת. אני מאמינה במה שאני לא יכולה לחלוק. אני מאמינה במה שאני לא יכולה לדמיין וגם לא מבינה. במרחק שבין האדמה לשמש או בגיל של היקום. אני מאמינה במה שאני יכולה לראות, אני מאמינה באקסים, במיקרובים ובמיקרוגלים. אני מאמינה באמונה שלמה ביסודות הטבלה המחזורית עם שמות הקדושים שלהם. כן, סטרונציום גלים. במשקלם ובמספר המדויק של אלקטרונים. אני מאמינה בכוכבים כי הם מתעקשים להתקבץ אף על פי שהם אולי מתים. אני מאמינה בגורל הכל יכול, בדברים שקורים בלי שום סיבה, בסיסמאות סתרים. אני מאמינה בשואב האבק המפורק, בסדקים שבקיר, באנטרופיה, המכלה אותנו לאיתה. אני מאמינה בחייו הכלואים של התא, בממברנות שלו, בגרעינים ובעברונים. אני מאמינה כי ראיתי אותם בתרשימים, כוכב לכת מעוות מבוקע לשניים, ורקיו הקטנים חשופים. אני מאמינה בקמטים ובנוגדי חמצון. אני מאמינה במוות בחריקת שיניים, רק כי העובדים אינם שווים, רק כי הלכו לפניי. אני מאמינה בבלתי נראה, בזעיר, ברחוק. אני מאמינה במה שסיפרו לי. גם אם לעולם לא אוכל לדעת. אני מאמינה בארבעת הממדים, או שיש 5. האמנתי בלהט באטום שאינו בר חלוקה. עכשיו אני מאמינה שהוא יכול להישבר, ואני מאמינה באלקטרונים ובפרוטונים, בניטרונים חסרי פניות, ואפילו בקווארקים. כי אני מאמינה כי יש הוכחות שלעולם לא אבין, ודברים לא סבירים וחסרי היגיון. כמו קיומו של אלוהים. That's just a beautiful poem. Oh. When you started writing it, did you know that God is on the other side, or were you? I mean, you said you were writing it as a credo, but did you know like where it would take you?
Where it would take me? No, I don't think I was aware of what I wanted so much to say at the beginning. But then, as I started writing it, I started to think about the relationship between faith and knowledge, right? And how people usually think they are totally separate things. But then I started realizing that things we know are also based on some measure on faith. Because, for example, the roundness of the earth, I know the earth is round, or I think I know it, but if I were asked to prove it mathematically, I wouldn't be able to do so. So I started realizing there are that the limits between faith and knowledge are flimsy, aren't as clear as they appear to be. So yeah, that's what the poem ended up being about. But at the beginning, it was more of an exercise, I think. And then when I started revising and writing it again, that's when it started becoming this.
Incredible.
Yeah.
A leap of faith that it's also what it takes to be a human being. It also needs a kind of a leap of faith, and
exactly.
I think in the last 2 years we even saw it more. No?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think faith. I've been thinking more and more about this in the last years as well with the pandemic. And
yeah. Like how willing are you to trust common project and other people's knowledge, which is part of it.
Exactly, and trusting other people's knowledge, exactly, yeah.
So this book that is dedicated to science, how do you feel science and poetry are connected?
Well, I think both science and poetry are respond to a similar principle, which is awe, or curiosity and awe, right? Like, I think there is this surprise at the bottom of both experiences. Well, not experiences, but at the bottom of science or the scientific need to decipher the world, and at the bottom of the poetic need to write about the world, there is this awe, like this surprise, this like looking at things with incredulity, and I don't know, like that experience I think is in the bottom of both, and also curiosity that is explored in different ways, because I think in science this curiosity wants us to decipher what is happening, and then maybe in poetry we are just celebrating the undecipherableness or the mystery of things. But I think curiosity is essential in both poetry and science as well. And also science regularly, when it describes things that are difficult to describe, kind of creates beautiful images without wanting to do so. For example, yeah, I always think about this event horizon, for example, in black holes, there is this part which is called the event horizon, and I think that's just a beautiful term, even if one doesn't know what it means. It's amazing, right? Or yeah, there are so many terms in science that are the principle of uncertainty, for example. That's great. That's beautiful. That's like poetry in its own. So
beauty is also something that connects them, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think there is beauty and elegance in both poetry and science. Mm-hmm.
Yes. No, it's true that when you get to the really abstract things, it's so vague sometimes, and and it's metaphors. It's really like metaphors. Once we have to describe it in our human language, it becomes metaphors.
Exactly. I think it's like science can't escape from metaphoric thought, because many of the things it's describing it doesn't even know what it is, right? So, for example, dark matter as well. There's like this thing in the universe that's 85% or 90 or even more of what pulls, like gravitational forces. There's like too much gravity for the amount of matter that we can see. So there are many scientists who believe there is a lot more matter, but you can't see it, but it's there, you know? And so it's called dark matter, and I think it's beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And your next book, which is a beautiful book, El Reino del Non Lineal, the Kingdom of the Non-Lineal, is divided into two parts. Well, and Ida, which are like round trip part in reverse order, because first then and then you go. And it's basically, the first part is monologues of dead people, you could say that. And it's separated by a dictionary-like definition of life. And the second part are all about a character named Ophelia. We can read one of them, Ophelia Visita al Médico.
Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah, let me find it. I think it's here. Yeah. Okay. Orfelia visita al médico. Todos los dioses usan batas blancas. Mañana es tarde. A esto te referías cuando me dijiste que las tiendas están abiertas las 24 horas. A esto te referías cuando me dijiste que había que ir muy lejos. Mi voz es un animal todavía tibio. El lugar donde aquí. La paciente muestra pocos signos de lucidez. Escúchenme. Mi dolor está en otro idioma. Quiero decir que necesito regresar, que me lo devuelvan. Los doctores son cadáveres de plumas, silenciosas corcheas, y sobre la tierra los semáforos ya me han olvidado. La doctora come ávidamente una granada. Su cuerpo es limpio como una radiografía. A veces hay que abrir más la incisión para que sane.
אופליה הולכת לרופא. תרגום טל ניצן. כל האלים לובשים חלוקים לבנים. מחר מאוחר. לכך התכוונת כשאמרת לי שהחנויות פתוחות 24 שעות ביממה. לכך התכוונת כשאמרת לי שצריך ללכת רחוק מאוד. קולי הוא חיה שעודנה חמימה. המקום הוא כאן. הפציינטית מפגינה סימני צלילות ספורים. הקשיבו לי, כאבי מצוי בשפה אחרת. רצוני לומר שעליי לחזור. רגע. There was another frame for this. The poem continues. Yes, there is another. Oh, okay. No. שישיבו לי אותו. הרופאים עם גוויות של נוצות, שמיניות טובים שטוקות, ועל הארץ הרמזורים כבר שכחו אותי. הרופאה אוכלת רימון בלהיטות. גופה נקי כמו צילום רנטגן. לעתים צריך לפתוח עוד יותר את החתך כדי שיחמיא. Okay. So can you, Orphelia is obviously like a portmanteau word of Orpheus and of Ophelia. Where did this come from? Can you tell us a little bit about this?
Yes, well, the second part of this book, which is called, as you say, Ida, is an exploration of major depressive disorder and the separation of two people, like a separation. And when I began writing it, I thought it was very difficult, and I needed to create a kind of character that was based on my own experience, but that was also kind of a little farther away that I could see from outside. And that's why all the titles speak of Orphelia as if she were a character that's remote to myself. And so that's why I created her. And she's a kind of portmanteau, as you say, of Orfeo, which is the god Orpheus, and who has to save Eurydice, right, from the underworld, and then he fails. And then and then Ophelia, the character in Hamlet, who drowns herself. So there are elements of both characters in the poems, and there are references and even some quotes, and kind of rewritten and changed inside the poems at moments.
Okay, and how is that related to the first part, or how did you work on this book? You first had the one idea, the second idea, and the definitions. How did it all fit in?
Yeah, well, I worked on it by parts. The first part I wrote were the Lazarus poems, which I call them the Lazarus because they are based on the biblical story of Lazarus. And the idea is that there are many people who are writing or who are telling us their stories because they died and then they came back to life. So they are narrating what happened at that little moment when they were dead. And that's the first thing I wrote. And then I wrote the Orphelia poems, the second part of the book. And then at the ending, I wrote kind of small definitions of the word life, because I thought that the book was too centered on death. And I was like, this is too obsessed with the darkness of death. And I wanted something more luminous. And that's when I thought about the definitions of life. And I wrote these little poems that work as definitions. And the idea is that there's one Lazarus poem and then one definition of life. And also the reason I wrote those poems is because even more enigmatic than death, the existence of death, I find the existence of life itself more enigmatic. Like what happened that biologically or at the moment when suddenly sterile matter became organic matter. So I think that's something that's always fascinated me. And I wanted to explore that poetically. And that's why I wrote those weird little poems.
I have to say it's all very much, I understand your feeling about it being saturated with death, but like the death is saturated with life there, absolutely. And the way around, I mean, it's just a very beautiful book.
Oh, thank you.
So will we read two more poems, Agujero Negro and another poem with a very long name. So can we...
Agujero Negro? Okay. Oh,
en un
okay.
café en Buenos Aires.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Can I see it? Oh, yes. This is in the first book, though. It's again.
Yes. Yeah, we came back to the first.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah. Let me just, I think it's better for me to find it here. Well, it's okay. Agujero Negro. Allí estaba el cadáver del perro, en el centro del jardín. Nos esperó su muerte las 2 noches, brillando de sed bajo la luz inútil de la luna. Imagino la escena desde la ventana. La lenta transformación del cuerpo en materia, en hueso, en aire venenoso. Mis oídos, mis ojos sobre su lenta huida de sí mismo. Implosión de estrella diminuta. Agujero negro en el corazón del pasto. A 2 metros exactos del ave del paraíso, atada a su tallo y moribunda. Impelida para el vuelo, imposible soltar amarras y convertirse en ave carroñera y saciar su hambre. Ahí, en el centro del jardín, empezó el mundo. Me mostró el perro su destiempo, su hundirse en sí mismo y el acto a voz en cuello de la muerte. Desde entonces, gira mi vida rigurosa, mis días en ciernes espirales, en torno al sitio exacto de su cuerpo. Y este se traga mi pasado, devora días y obras, el jardín y su casa que hace años no existen, las comidas de domingo, el piano desdentado y la abuela, sentada al tocador con sus perfumes. Cada frasco, cada olor ennegrecido, la vajilla suspendida, girando ante la gravedad enorme de ese centro, en el que se desliza sin luz toda mi vida, y los horas y días que se han ido, y los años que me faltan para siempre.
חור שחור, תרגום טל ניצן. שם באמצע הגן הייתה גביעת הכלב, מותו חיכה לנו 2 לילות, בוהק מרוב צמא, תחת אור השווא של הירח. אני מדמה לי את הסצנה מהחלון, הפיכתו האיטית של הגוף לחומר, לעצם, לאוויר רעיל. עיניי צופות במנוסתו האיטית מעצמו, קריסת כוכב זעיר, חור שחור בלב העשב, 2 מטרים בדיוק מציפור גן העדן, הכפותה לגבעולה וקמלה. בלי שתוכל להתעופף, לשמוט כבלים ולהפך לעוף דורס ולהשביע את רעבונה. שם באמצע הגן התחיל העולם. הכלב הראה לי את קיצו בטרם עת, את שקיעתו לתוך עצמו ואת מיטתו הרועמת. מאז חגים חיי ימי המלבלבים בספירלות מוקפדות סביב מיקום גופו המדויק, והוא בולע את עברי טורף ימים ומעשים, את הגן והבית שאינם זה שנים, ארוחות יום ראשון, הפסנתר חסר השיניים וסבתא יושבת עם סמיה מול שולחן האיפור, כל בקבוקון, כל ניחוח שהשחיר. הכלים המתרוממים כולם חגים כלפי כוח המשיכה האדיר של המרכז ההוא, שאליו גולשים כל חיי החשוכים והשעות והימים שחלפו והשנים שעוד צפויות לי לתמיד.
En un café de Buenos Aires, mi amiga divorciada me enseña una foto de su boda. No la conocí entonces, y aún así, en la foto, se parece más a sí misma que la mujer sentada a mi lado. Míranos, me dice, con su cara ajena, con sus otras manos, con sus ojos de asfalto llovido y hambre a medianoche. En la foto bailan los novios, y afuera estamos ella y yo solas, platicando. La tristeza de los otros es una ciudad desconocida, calles y calles que no sabes a dónde llevan, casas demolidas, edificios de vidrio, mascarones, y techos con goteras y pasillos de madera combada. Podemos imaginar tan poco. Apenas unos segundos se mantiene vigente la trivial fantasía de haber nacido ahí y saber de memoria el tedio de la calle principal, rutas del colectivo, cada parada del metro. Pero es casi imposible imaginar la costumbre. El recuerdo más triste es solo una estación del pensamiento, ese mirar sin sorpresa el teatro en ruinas, la parada en Congreso, la espera subterránea, tantas veces visto, todo tan rutina, hasta que pierde filo incluso lo más triste y se cambia el dolor por otra cosa más tibia. En la mesa de enfrente, una pareja de viejos come sin mirarse. Es silencio, es el ritual antiguo que los convoca a morir de a poco, cara a cara. Quizás un día te despiertas y has olvidado los pasos descalzos de tu amante en la madera rubia de tu primera casa. Ahora se hace de noche. La ciudad se cierra sobre nuestras palabras. Los viejos se levantan. El lugar se vacía. Al fondo escucho un tango y no recuerdo su nombre. De pronto me parece que esta tarde también quedó muy lejos, que ya estamos muy lejos también de Buenos Aires.
בבית קפה בבואנוס איירס חברתי הגרושה מראה לי תמונה מחתונתה. עוד לא הכרתי אותה אז, ואף על פי כן בתמונה היא דומה לעצמה יותר מאשר האישה יושבת לידי. תראי אותנו, היא אומרת לי, בפניה הזרים, בידיה האחרות, בעיניה, עיני אספלט רטוב מגשם, עיני רעב של חצות. בתמונה רוקדים החתן והכלה, ומחוץ לאי ואני לבדנו, משוחחות. עצבות הזולת היא עיר נוכריה. רחובות על רחובות שאינך יודעת לאן יובילו, בתים הרוסים, מגדלי זכוכית, פסלים, ותקרות מטפטפות ופרוזדורי עץ שחוקים. הדמיון מוגבל כל כך. רק לרגע חטוף שורד את הפנטזיה הסתמית כאילו נולדנו שם, ומוכרים לנו בעל פה, שעמום הרחוב הראשי, מסלולי האוטובוס, כל תחנה של התחתית, אבל בלתי אפשרי כמעט לדמיין את ההרגל. העצוב שבזיכרונות אינו אלא שהות קצרה במחשבה, אותו מבט לא מופתע בתיאטרון החרב. התחנה בקונגרס או המתנה על הרציף, הכל נצפה פעמים רבות כל כך, הכל כה שגרתי. עד שגם העצוב מכל מקטהה והכאב מתחלף במשהו אחר, פושר יותר. בשולחן שממול, זוג קשישים אוכל בלי להחליף מבט. בשתיקה, זה הטקס העתיק המזמין אותם למות בהדרגה. זו מול זה. יום אחד אולי תתעוררי ותגלי ששכחת את צעדיו היחפים של אהובך על הפרקט הבהיר של ביתך הראשון. עכשיו מעריב. העיר נסגרת על מילותינו. זוג הקשישים קם ללכת. המקום מתרוקן. ברקע מתנגן איזה טנגו שאיני זוכרת את שמו. פתאום נדמה לי שגם הערב הזה נשאר הרחק מאחור, שכבר הרחקנו מאוד גם מבואנוס איירס. The question I have is really will be about translation, but if you want to say something about these poems first, just as they are.
About the poems. Yeah. Oh, actually they are, well, the last poem we read is the first poem I ever published in Spanish in a magazine. So yeah, it's very nice to read it again because I never read it anymore in readings. So it's very interesting to read it again years later after having written it. And I remember the last verses of estamos muy lejos también de Buenos Aires. We are very far away now from Buenos Aires, and I thought I am indeed very far away now from.
We are always very far from.
We are always very far from Buenos Aires. That's so
unfortunately.
Yeah. So yeah, it was interesting to read it and to feel the ending ring very true to myself right now. Mm-hmm.
So these are also, you're also a translator, and you translate the poetry of Ocean Vuong, Spanish, for which you won the Aguascalientes Poetry Prize, and you also translated both of these poems that you wrote into English, right?
Oh, right. Yeah, I did translate them into English. Yeah.
So if you remember, can you tell us about this experience of translating your own work, if there are things you would never translate that you would, or...
Yeah, well, actually, I started writing in Spanish, translating my own work from English, because for some weird reason that I don't know, and it's probably something I have to see with my psychoanalyst, in therapy, I started writing in English, which is not my mother tongue. It's my second language. So I did the master's degree in New York University in English. And then when I had to go back to Mexico, I started translating my own poems into Spanish. And
wow.
So I found
when was that? Like how many years? How old were you?
2015. So it's not that far away. And I started translating myself, and I found it to be a great freedom, because as it is my own work, I can betray myself and it's okay. I mean, I can just rewrite what I was writing or just change it and alter it. I have a lot of freedom.
You first wrote poetry in English, then you translated your poetry into Spanish? I mean, first experience of writing poetry in Spanish was a translation. kind of?
I did once try to write in Spanish, but not for very long. I felt weird writing in Spanish, also because I think I studied English literature. So I guess my relationship to the written word was closer to English, than with Spanish. But then I did indeed start translating my own work, and I started reading much more in Spanish and mostly poetry in Spanish. And now I only write in Spanish and I can't write in English, which is really interesting. When I wrote in English, I couldn't write in Spanish, and now I can only write in Spanish. And yeah, but translating myself was a very nice experience because I had total freedom. When I translate, for example, Ocean Vuong or Natalie Diaz or other poets, I have to be super concentrated and try to decipher what they meant and try to convey that into my language. But when I translate myself, it's like I can say anything and it's okay if I don't say exactly the same thing. So yeah.
But you don't do it anymore, right? I mean, you don't translate your own work.
Not into English. No, I think it would be weird. I don't know.
You prefer someone else to do that?
I prefer someone else to do that now because I feel I just remembered a word in Spanish because I feel kind of oxidada, which is this word that I can't remember.
Okay. Yeah,
I feel like not as able as I was before to write in English. So yeah, I prefer if somebody else translates it now.
Wow. Okay. So I think we don't have so much time, but before we move to questions, you spent the last days in Madrid introducing your new book, I suppose. Yeah. So Proyecto Manhattan, which is a very unusual text. It's like a poem play dedicated to the women involved in the atomic bomb project.
Yeah.
Wow. How did this happen? And why and how did you get to this play?
Well, actually, I presented the El Reino de lo No Lineal in Spain right now, but my last book, Proyecto Manhattan, is this kind of hybrid between a play and a series of poems, and it's inspired in the creation, the Project Manhattan Project, which is where the atomic bomb was created. And I've always been fascinated by the existence of the atomic bomb in the sense that I find it very disquieting for us to have created the human race, this human race to have created something that can destroy us and like in a matter of seconds, no? It's destroyed practically the whole world in a matter of seconds. So I think it's a very important moment in our history. And I was always fascinated by it. And also the lives of many of the scientists involved, I found very fascinating. But when I started writing the book, I realized I was even more fascinated by the stories of women, which were indirectly or directly involved in the project. And so the book changed totally and became a book about the women involved in the project. So yeah.
And that's kind of ruins the illusion that there would be peace if women ruled the world, or no?
The what? I'm sorry?
Yeah, I'm saying it's kind of ruins the illusion that there would be peace if women ruled the world.
Well, yeah, although most, except
there's one that is like actively.
Scientist, which was, Leona Woods was very active and very much in favor of the atomic bomb. And never, because most of the scientists afterwards, they said they regretted being involved, but she was like, no, I've never regretted being involved. She was very adamant about her support, which is she was a fascinating but very disquieting character. But also there is a story of the women in Oak Ridge, which were women who worked at a factory, and they were never told that they were being taught to isolate the isotope of uranium necessary to build the atomic bomb. And so they isolated the uranium without knowing what they were doing. So they are directly involved. Actually, the uranium they isolated was the one used in the bombs of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but they were never told. So I think that also raises interesting questions about responsibility.
Yeah, and why a play? I mean, why? There is something that is already, I think, a little play like in the Nonilal, because it's also already like monologues, and even the dictionary definitions have this thing of like a break, you know, like that you have a little.
Oh, right, yeah.
Like that, you know.
Yeah, well, I think I've always been fascinated by dramatic monologues, which is this form of poetry very much that English poetry goes back to that form, which is where characters speak, characters which are not the lyrical poet, no, or like the identity of the poet, but somebody else speaks. And I've always been fascinated by those dramatic monologues. And then I wondered, why not take it a step farther? Because the origin of the dramatic monologues was the play, right? For example, the Shakespearean monologues and so. And so I thought, why not go back to the play and just write many dramatic monologues and then some acotaciones, which is directions for the scene. So I also wrote poems which are like directions for the scene and for characters and stuff.
Okay. I encourage anyone who reads Spanish to read Elisa's entire books, because it's a really unique experience and they're beautiful and they're so much meaningful. And do we have questions that anyone want to ask? Okay. Somebody's asking, they're saying they would like to hear more what you think about non-linearity. And it's interesting in the context of the first poem about scoliosis and the title of the second book, and in general, non-linearity as opposed to science, dealing with science.
Oh, that's a beautiful question. Thank you. Yeah, well, the title of my second book is El Reino de lo No Linear, the Kingdom of the Non-Linear. The term non-linearity comes, I'm not an expert, but comes from mathematics. Like particular kinds of mathematical systems are called non-linear systems. But actually there's this Russian scientist called Priogine. I think that, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but he was the one who said that life was a non-linear system, the kingdom of the non-linear. And I thought that was a beautiful definition for life. And that's where I got the title from. So it's actually a quote of Priogine that appears somewhere. Oh yeah, here in page 25, it appears, right? So that's where it comes from. But yeah, indeed, I think there is a relationship to the first poem, Scoliosis, which something that has to be linear, which is the vertebral column, the backbone, actually isn't linear at all, right? So what happens, I think there are many systems inside all of my poems. I'm exploring systems which should be geometric or linear or ordered in a particular way, but are in fact not ordered that way, or kind of there's the seed of something chaotic inside them.
Or at least we have to see it that way, because our consciousness is limited. And another question, it seems you're totally open to the spirit, to the life of dead people. And on the other hand, you're attracted to what is scientific and exact. Do you feel there's a opposition or a tension between the two, or is it just they complete each other?
Oh, thank you. Well, I think what fascinates me about science, one of the things that fascinates me about science is that it proposes an order to order the world, but the world always resists such attempts to order it, right? So I think what I like is, and sometimes in Principia I write about that as well, is how, for example, there's one poem about the scientific method, right? And so I try to insert the scientific method into something that's the memory of my mother's sickness, right? And so the idea is to try and underline how these kinds of attempts to organize or order the world or make it seem as a perfectly coherent structure are always failing, but are nonetheless necessary. So I think, in a sense, I'm more interested in how science is unable to describe the world wants to describe than about the way it actually orders the world. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense. So in that sense, I think I'm more aligned to the apparent chaotic thing of the Lazarus monologues and etc.
Okay. Well, I wish to ask, not in the chat, because, you know, I'm part of the manager, so, you know, I have, I can do what I want to. And first to say that your poems are fantastic. We're the staff sitting here in the WhatsApp and we're going crazy. Static, beautiful poems. It's a blessing for us to hear you this evening. And I was wondering, where the hell did you come from? You know, this is a very big question. And I'll make it simple, poetically. The influences. Like I could hear Whitman and I can hear Lorca, and I guess that I can, I don't know other Mexican or other poets that you were influenced by, but it seems you're a free spirit that you take from many other poets, and it's full of magic. And I want to thank you personally in the name of everybody that listened to you this evening.
Oh, thank you so much, Gilad. Thank you for what you say about the poems and thank you for the question as well. Well, I think where I come from poetically, it's like this a big mixture of many poets whom I admire very much, but also I always think we're rewriting things we read, but also things we hear. And also I think my parents' voices are also in a way inside the poems, and their fascination with science, which they inoculated me with. Like I also think that they are present in the poems. But regarding poets, I think were a direct influence. I always mention Wisława Szymborska, because I'm a big fan of hers. I really, really love her work. And I think she uses the poem as a place for almost philosophical reflection, not only for lyrical, I don't know, like trips, because sometimes I think poems, at least in Mexican tradition, there's a lot of poetry that happens in this lyrical space, and which is tied to emotions, but not in a very, I don't know, like kind of happening in a lyrical space, floating. And I think Szymborska resists that and uses that as an intellectual place for reflection. And I really admire that of hers, and also her sense of humor. So I always mention Szymborska because I think I love how she uses the mechanism of the poem. And also I like as you can see, my poems are kind of long. And so I think that maybe is very aligned to my Mexican roots. And I think there's this thing with very long, lengthy poems in Mexican tradition, for example, Octavio Paz, or I always mention Abigail Bojorquez, Max Rojas, Rosario Castellanos. I think there's this thing with long poems in Mexican poetry, and I do feel kind of influenced by that, indeed. And also I always mention Vallejo, who's a poet I admire profoundly. And yes, indeed, Lorca is also present, also with his plays, right? Because he did have a lot of plays, and indeed, Proyecto Manhattan is structured as one. So yeah, also Lorca. And from the United States, I always mention Anne Carson and Sharon Olds, which are two very big influences in my work. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. And I just want to tell that the translations are great. Tal and Michal did a great work.
Oh, thank you. Oh, it was lovely to listen to the poems in another tongue. It's also always very amazing, and so it was very moving. Thank you. Should I answer one of the questions, or what? Oh, I think
it's a good time to read a poem.
Oh, okay.
If there's a poem that you haven't read yet.
And there's another question.
Okay.
There's another question in the chat box.
Oh, okay.
You can answer it, please.
Okay. I don't think it's about, I mean, I'm not sure it says it requires a lot of courage to write about one's health, but it's particularly your health.
Yeah, I think it's, I've always been fascinated and disquieted by the experience of physical pain. When I was young, I had a condition that was difficult to diagnose, and I suffered a lot of pain, physical pain. And at that time, I realized that it's impossible to convey pain, right? It must in language. And I found that so weird, because I thought language, if it has to communicate anything, it should be able to communicate pain. But pain is very difficult to describe. And so I've always thought about that, I think, a lot. And I write a lot about physical pain, about health, and about one's relationship to pain and language. And so, yeah, that's one of the reasons I write poetry, I think, because I found that poetry is the best place, or the place in language where it is possible to convey pain and to empathize with other people's pain.
Yeah. Okay. Are there any more questions, or?
Maybe you can read another poem, sorry, that you already read. Which one you like?
A new one? Or
maybe a new, or maybe you can read a new one.
Yeah, why not?
Only in Spanish.
Yeah. Even if it's not translated, I don't know.
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
Okay, I'll read a short one. Let me just find one that I feel could work. Oh yeah, I know which one. This one. It's one of the Lazarus, so it's in the voice of someone who died and came back to life. Fui a la cocina por un vaso de agua. Sucedió entonces. Lo último que recuerdo es el sonido del vidrio contra el piso. No sé si desperté, si sigo vivo. Soy mi propio colofón de huesos y rutina. Me morí y sostenía en la mano un simple vaso de agua. Somos, a fin de cuentas, todo lo que dejamos caer.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Sorry,
I don't have the translation.
Fine.
You can hear it forever, you reading. It's like music. It's amazing.
Oh, thank you. That's what I hear as well when you read the translations. Thank you so much.
So I want to thank you both for the amazing session. It was inspiring and amazing, really. Don't have any more words right now, but thank you very much. And thank you all to all of the viewers for this wonderful poetry event. Please be back here in about 25 minutes for Kima Donizio and Reut Ben Yaakov.
Wow.
It will be great. And see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for inviting me. It was lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will be in touch.
Okay. Yes, please.
Yes, we have some good thoughts.
Okay. Thank you. Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.